been married for quite a while. Got a bunch of kids doing faith in style. They'll tell you that you're awesome and you're not alone. So let's start the show. Who knew Catholics could be so much fun? Greg and Jennifer and how faith is done. Screwing up and trying and forgiving. Adventures in imperfect living. Adventures in imperfect living.
Greetings, folks. Welcome to the program. My name is Greg Willits from RosaryArmy.com.
And I am Jennifer Willits, his straight-haired wife.
When you start the show talking about your hair, that's just going to take us in all sorts of directions that I don't think we want to go.
Well, this is the first time, no, maybe the second time potentially. Our viewers are seeing the straight-haired Jennifer. That's all.
Okay. Well, so whereas for me, you get to see more and more white hair keeps appearing on a weekly basis in my beard.
White bearded Greg.
Because I always feel like I have to counter whatever you say in regards to your hair
Okay.
with my hair. So thank you for joining us on the program. I'm glad to have you with us. Listen, do you need a miracle in your life? Particularly, are you looking for some healing in your life? This is a humdinger. This is going to be a humdinger. I think it's going to hit some people really hard, squarely in right between your eyes, and hopefully not just between your eyes, but right directly into your heart as well. We both got emotional during this conversation that you're about to hear with Marlene Watkins. She's the founder of an organization that's been around for over 20 years now, just a few years older than Rosary Army, as a matter of fact. It was I saw a lot of parallels in what she was talking about. But this organization of Lourdes Volunteers, lourdesvolunteers.org is how you can find it, helping people who are seeking healing to actually make a pilgrimage to Lourdes and experience the miracles that happen there and have been happening there since 1858. Just a heartwarming conversation from a lovely woman who we're so glad to have had the chance to sit down and talk with. You're going to love this conversation as we discuss today, Everyday Miracles of Lourdes, with today's guest, Marlene Watkins. Marlene, we just had all sorts of technical issues trying to get connected just now. And on top of that, I saw on your website that you had, I believe, 5 media appearances scheduled for today. You look wonderful for all this difficulty of the technology. My goodness gracious, how are you holding up today?
Well, great, but it helps that there's a great tech person right across the street who runs all down the driveway and up the stairs and helps us out.
That was pretty impressive. That he came over and was able to get everything up and running. And we've been looking forward to this. You know, we've never had the opportunity ourselves to go to Lourdes. It's on our wish list. Yeah, well, it's
never been.
and you know, especially with our Rosary Army ministry, we've been talking for a while of it would seem very appropriate. We're just celebrating 20 years this month actually of Rosary Army, and we've never led a Marian pilgrimage. We just feel at some point between now and the 25th anniversary of Rosary Army that Lourdes and Fatima. Very much, and quite honestly, we'd love to go to any de Montfortian places in France as well. It just seems so appropriate. You've been there hundreds of times now. How many times have you been over to Lourdes?
Well, they say it's over 230. I don't actually count. And I have to say that just sounds like spiritual gluttony to be able to go so many times. But it's going to be a grace because I never go to the airport and going, oh, I got to go back to there. You know, every time I go, it's a grace. Every time I'm there, I'm just refueled and refilled. It's always a grace. And it's a tremendous privilege. And of course, we've been so many times because we're bringing the very sick to Lourdes, and we're bringing young people to serve the sick, and university students and medical teams. And so we're going over many times to make it possible for the sick to be able to go to Lourdes throughout the season. But I had to say, when you mentioned Fatima earlier, when my best friend had her business card plucked out of a fishbowl and won tickets, she said, "You want to go to Lourdes?" I said, "I love that place with the 3 little kids."
So was that indicative of where your faith development was, or was that just misunderstanding at that time?
Well, you know, when I looked back on it, I thought, yeah, I knew what Fatima was because my mother had gone there years before. But, you know, I think for a lot of us Americans, we sort of think of those apparitions over there, and we might not necessarily know which one is which or which one is known for what. So I think that's a pretty typical Catholic. I didn't go to Catholic schools, but I think that's a very typical Catholic. It was just my faith journey, but also kind of my own ignorance. And, I loved Our Lady. It made a consecration to Our Lady at the request of my mother years before that. But I think after a while, that just was, same lady, different dress, different time,
Yeah.
So, and I guess Lourdes, of course, is known for miracles.
Yeah.
That's where, so if people had to put a word with Our Lady of Lourdes, I think that probably they'd ask, is that the one with the miracles or not? So I think so. Our Lady's known in each place for a distinctive reason. She stops by to see us because we need her, and she needs to guide us. So, and that seems to be what it is at Lourdes. So for me, I'm going to pray that this is your 20th anniversary. I'm going to invite you to Lourdes and come, because, we pray the Rosary every day in the grotto in different languages. EWTN broadcasts the Rosary live, and maybe you could do that. We can connect you and introduce you. It's such a blessing that's broadcast all over the world.
Well, it's one of those things. It's like, we've been so blessed by our Blessed Mother that we've just sort of stopped looking for the opportunity, or stop trying to find the opportunities, and just let them happen. And so if that's what she wants for her son, then
it's going to work.
Then we'd be there. We'd be there. But thank you for even thinking of us in that way. We'd be beyond honored.
Be very honored to consider that. But I wanted to get back to the M word that you mentioned, and that's miracles. A lot of us have strong opinions about that. There are many jaded amongst us, and some who are firm believers in miracles. So I'm a little curious, what was your own opinion about miracles before you experienced one of your own?
Well, I think when we read the Gospels, or we hear the Gospels at Mass, or, whatever faith we might be, we know that there's these historic Old Testament, New Testament miracles. And the Catholic Church defines a miracle. I mean, there's clarity for us there. In fact, at Lourdes, there's a medical bureau that investigates when someone claims they've experienced what they call a miracle. But a miracle is a holy word. That's why it's up to the church, a bishop, to proclaim it. In the medical bureau, they said miracle is not a word that they have in medical school. They're there only to say, can we explain what happened to this person scientifically or not? And then if they say they can't explain it, then it can be up to the church to say further that God is the one who caused this to happen. And that's what a miracle is. It means it's beyond what we can do. It's something God has done. It's something that's not humanly possible. So I think I always thought of miracles as 2,000 years ago, and that was that. That, God is active in our lives every day. And I know I have people, friends, and all of us will say, oh, that's a coincidence or a God incidence. That a miracle truly is when God has intervened. And that's what this book is about, is there's the miracles that go through the medical bureau. There's 70 that the church has proclaimed out of the 7,800 files that they have. That doesn't even count the hundreds of thousands, probably millions of people who just never even went to the medical bureau, don't even know it exists. And I mean, I'm talking really profound, miraculous, like the blind can see, the lame can walk, the dying live. I'm talking those kinds of really dramatic biblical miracles that take place. And this book is about, I think it's been coming up lately, that gospel of, the paralytic to pick up his stretcher and walk, which is greater. So in the Gospels, it's even saying, what's greater, a miracle of the soul or a miracle of the body? I mean, the body is temporary. We don't have this body forever. It's our soul that's eternal. So for me, a miracle was something out of the Gospels. But Jesus Christ didn't just come for the people then 2,000 years ago, and the rest of us are lucked out and we missed out, or, no, that's the same Lord that we have now. And he's active in our lives. And these really amazing miracles still do happen. They use them in the Catholic Church for the canonization process, that someone has to know that this saint in heaven, this proven friend of God, is asked and interceded for a miracle to happen. So we know that those are still ongoing, but probably Lourdes, I would think, is the most well-known for miracles in the world by Catholics, Christians, and people of no faith at all, or all different faiths, because of this documentation process that takes place there.
So it started in 1858, but for those who aren't familiar with the whole story, and Saint Bernadette. And I mean, it's a very well-known movie that many people watch every year, of the Song of Bernadette. The story basically is that our Blessed Mother appeared to this young woman, and the healings have continued all that time.
Yes. So, and I think that black and white movie, The Song of Bernadette, that, the generation above us, they knew that movie well. In fact, the Holy Father at the time and bishops probably couldn't have made the story of Lourdes more well known than that movie did.
Yeah.
So people saw that of all different faiths. And actually, the book, The Song of Bernadette, is not written by a Catholic. It's written by a Jewish man, Franz Werfel, who was trying to hide during the war from Hitler. He was number 5 on his most wanted list. And it was the good, faithful people of Lourdes who hid and protected him. And he saw the people coming to the grotto, and he was so moved by it. So he made in prayer in earnest and promised God, if I should live to make it to America, I promise to, these are his words, sing the Song of Bernadette to the world. So that's the Song of Bernadette. And of course, it's made into a movie, and they embellish a few things here and there. But for the most part,
it had Vincent Price in it. They had to embellish it. I mean, he's anything he shows up in is an embellishment. So.
Well, there you go. But it's somewhat accurate to the basics, which are 18 times the Mother of God comes down from heaven. And appears to little Bernadette. She's only 14.
Oh, wow.
And she tells us, the lady's the same size as me. She's the same age as me. So Our Lady appearing there to her, which Bernadette never calls her a lady, by the way. She calls her Akiro. It means that one in her dialect. She doesn't speak French. She speaks the local language. And she calls her Akiro. And which is beautiful there is that's how the church knows who she is ultimately. Because on March 25th, Bernadette feels a pull again to go to the grotto. She says the beautiful lady's waiting for her, and she asks her 3 times for her name, because the parish priest is wise. He's like, who is this lady in the grotto that only Bernadette can see? Who asks for a church to be built and a chapel, and who asks for people to come in procession? Which, by the way, this is the only apparition where she asks for people to come there in procession, which is why we go all the time. The pilgrimage and procession was the same word for Bernadette. But, incredible things happen. And you're right. The miracles happen during the apparitions, and they continue to this day. So they're ongoing. It's the spring still flows, the grace still flows, and the miracles are happening.
So in the book, you give more of a history of Lourdes for those who need a little bit of a primer or a refresher on it. And then you share 20 stories in this of different miracles that have experienced. And the first one is yours. And I have to say that it hit home for us personally, hearing your own story of developing PTSD as a result of something that happened in the workplace, because a similar thing happened to me. And we've had to talk about that on our show publicly over the last few years of explaining that thing. So it was very... I wasn't surprised, and I was surprised at the same time as, these God incidences, right? These little miracles of God bringing people together to read your story and to hear how you were treated, and that led to a debilitating agoraphobia for you, where you were just becoming more and more sequestered into your house. Can you talk a little bit about your own story and the healing that you found in the waters of Lourdes?
Well, first of all, I'm sorry for you that you suffered an experience, because I think there are many who have. So I'm sorry for you personally and for all who suffer.
And we talk about it because we know many people have, right? And I've started to experience great healing in the last several years. And so thank you for that, for saying that. But we talk about it. And one of the reasons we wanted to have you on is because we want to keep talking about it and pointing people to God and the miracles that he can bring into their lives.
Well, one thing I'd like to say is when this book went to the publisher, my chapter was not in there. I did not intend for my chapter to be there or to have it there. And then a proof was sent to our bishop to ask if we could have an imprimatur. And at that time, that was in that particular draft. And the bishop spoke about that chapter, how significant it was, and therefore the decision was made that it would stay, because I didn't want to detract from anyone else's story. There are all those 20 beautiful stories, but So thank you for saying that, because someone else who's in the book said to me, please, please put your story there, because for those of us who suffer about staying at home, especially since COVID,
Mm-hmm.
there's so many people who have just found themselves confined, and now they're kind of stuck in it. And, they say there's no cure for PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And that's what I was told. That's what they said. Oh, they just thought I was a religious fanatic, because I said, I'm telling you, I went to Lourdes and I had this healing grace, and that just made a bigger crazy stamp, I think, on my file. But they just called it religiosity, I think, or I don't know. They didn't tell me that, but I would assume. But for me, who'd ever think I would go? I mean, in the book, it tells the story that my second oldest son had a little pool that they would bet I wouldn't leave the front door. I wouldn't leave the driveway. I wouldn't go into the airport. I wouldn't get on the plane. I wouldn't leave the runway. Not one person took the square that said I would actually go. That's how nobody believed it. But it was a total grace.
And this was in 2001 timeframe?
Yeah, 2000, the Jubilee
Okay, 2000. Okay.
And, my best friend wins these 2 business class tickets, which we didn't fly business class. And I'm going with her. I was more afraid of people around me where I lived than I was people I didn't know who didn't even speak English over in France. And so we were in assigned seats. And, the flight attendant said, you can't have any coffee because you're going to jump right out of that window. So it must have been obvious how, I was. And I had like a little card, a little recipe card around my neck with a little string that I punched holes in it. I'm a housewife. I have recipe cards that had my name on it, my phone number, my address, and where we were supposed to be on that particular date. Because I'd get so stressed, I'd forget things, I couldn't find things. And that's how the confinement came for me. I don't know about you. I think everyone has a different experience, but for me, it just became so stressful to go out every time. It got worse and worse and worse that eventually you just can't go anymore.
Yeah.
And so it was a grace that I was able to do this, because a year before that, I just had this overwhelming compulsion that I wanted to see the Pope with my own eyes. And I had turned on the TV and found this nun praying the Rosary, Mother Angelica, in the middle of the night when I'd be stressed and couldn't sleep. And I just wanted to see the Holy Father. And I thought, unless he's coming in my living room, that's not going to happen. But and so when my friend won the tickets, I knew instantly. She said, oh, let's go to Lourdes. And I said, oh, let's go to Rome and see the Pope with my own eyes. And so that was my, compulsion. And even my brother thought planning the trip was really the experience, not going on it. He thought it was just reading about the different saints. He thought, oh, that's a nice thing. That's a good thing for you to do. But he never thought I'd actually do it. Yeah. So the fact that I got there is in itself its own miracle. But I still was clinging to my best friend. I joke, she's got scars on her arm from me clinging to her on the plane and everywhere we went. And we were in holy places. We avoided the crowds because they made me so panicky. But in a blessing, we went to Lourdes early on, and I just floated out of those baths. It was as if all of that, whatever it is, and that PTSD, that anxiety, that fear, that whatever those things are that are crippling us, it just fell right off, washed off in that water. It just floated away from me. And I came out, and it was just this profound peace. And in this peace, I'd also like to say that I always thought that, peace was the absence of evil. No, peace is more than that. Peace is a gift that only Jesus Christ can give. Peace is a gift that we can receive. It's not just that evil isn't there. When you're at peace, evil can't get to you, but it's just this profound peace. And I realized what a blessing that was. But that was only the first of 2 miracles that happened for me in Lourdes. But then again, you can't go to the medical bureau and x-ray agoraphobia or PTSD.
Right.
So that can't go to the medical bureau. But this profoundly changed my life. So that for me and my family, that was miraculous. And I say my children, our sons, suffered worse, and my husband, from that than I did. I thought I was suffering.
On that trip that you went, and I just wanted to clarify, was it your intention to seek a healing, or was the intention to see the Holy Father? And so was the healing sort of unexpected because you weren't asking for it necessarily?
True. I did not go there asking for anything in particular. In fact, even the second time I went, I had this big, what I call the Santa Claus list. So I have a list of things that I know what everybody else needs. I know better than God. Well, she needs this. My husband needs that. My son needs this.
Yeah,
And, in my list for myself, very inaccurate. I'm sure God laughs at it, but it's this Santa Claus list we go with. And God doesn't laugh at our desires and our lists. He just knows more fully, of course, everything. And so when I floated out of there, it was so profound. I had no idea. If you'd have said to me, what's the grace you asked for or you needed, was certainly not that. And I didn't even know. Remember, I don't know about you, but I have doctors saying to me, you have PTSD. There's no cure for this.
No.
There's nothing that can be done for you. This is the way it is. You'll always be like this. So that's what's being told you by the professionals.
Yeah. For me, it was just, here, take this pill, take this pill, take this pill, take this pill,
Yes.
take this pill.
Yeah. Or, if you just keep talking about this, if you get counseling, if you do that, but that's really, a deep wound. And of course, our Lord is not bound by, a diagnostic, dictionary. Our Lord can heal us, and he did. And I'm grateful. And there are others like us who need this healing and need to know that it can happen. And if somebody's thinking, okay, I can't get on the plane, I can't do that. Bernadette was asked, how much Lourdes water do we need for a miracle? How much Lourdes water is needed? She said, 1 drop in faith. And I would go beyond that and say, we don't even need to have our own faith. Someone else can have that faith for us, and we can receive that grace. We can receive that healing. And, the other thing I've learned at Lourdes, first of all, I learned something every single time. There's never a time I go that I don't learn something. But the other thing I learned is that maybe we should just ask for the grace we're in greatest need of, because maybe we don't even know what that is. Yeah. I would guess we don't know. I would guess that the majority, I would not just guess, I believe now that most of us don't even know what we need the most.
And that kind of goes back to, you said that your mother encouraged you to consecrate yourself to Jesus through Mary earlier in your life before you even went there. And we just renewed we're experiencing a lot of anniversaries right now, but our 20th anniversary of the renewal of that. And we went through recording a lot of these prayers again for Rosary Army and did some meditations that we recorded. And in doing that, it really was re-emphasized to us. We've had to go through this for 20 years before you start, really kind of getting some of the nuances of it. The graces that we receive, it's almost more efficacious when we can get to a point of learning to stop asking for specific graces, as you said, because Jesus and Mary want to shower us with graces that we can't even imagine. And when we can turn ourselves over, the more we surrender, our infirmities, our difficulties, our crosses, the more they're able to work miraculously, I think. And that's something that coming to that realization, again, it takes a while. So I can only imagine after all of the visits that you've had to Lourdes, and if you've learned something every time, how many more graces you must have received in that time.
One thing I want to say too is I want to thank you, because it never occurred to me until you just said this, that when my mother invited me to make a consecration to the Immaculate Conception, which had no specific different, all was Our Lady to me, like one statue to another. I just thought she had a big wardrobe, had no connection to who she was in each of these statues. But it was with my best friend who won the tickets. It was the two of us together.
Really? Are you kidding me?
I never thought about that until you just.
That is fantastic.
I have to wait to her and thank her and thank my mother in heaven for that. But
oh my goodness, that makes it even better.
And the other thing is, I think there's so many profound things. I know you were going to ask a question too, but it was, I always thought we were bringing the sick to Lourdes.
Yeah.
It took me years to figure out the sick bring us so we can be healed. It's the other way around. So lots of times I'm with you. There's just so much to unwrap, discover the great graces and gifts there along the way. And it's just amazing that our Lord is so patient with us,
Well, I'm curious about the whole healing situation and people seeking miracles, because obviously we know people do have oftentimes a reason why they want to go to Lourdes, because they have a wound that they, for whatever reason, believe it's incurable. And so maybe some desperation comes into it. Maybe it is great faith. Maybe it's everything that leads them ultimately to Lourdes. What do you say to those pilgrims who are scared maybe to even try because they're afraid that it won't get healed, or that they're going to come out of that bath with exactly the same perceptions of themselves as they were when they entered into the bath. And they want so desperately to be healed, like they see people being healed, but how do you comfort the ones who can't perceive that they were? Or is there something I'm missing about all this?
That is a wonderful question. It's a loaded question, because I think a lot of people are afraid to ask it, so it stays loaded and doesn't get, exposed or answered. So thank you for that. But first of all, I truly, truly believe that no one would go on any journey to see the Mother of God and leave empty-handed. Imagine if you travel to her and she's there. There's a grace for sure. It might not penetrate or sink in until later, but nobody leaves empty-handed. And what most people say, almost all say, I got the grace I needed, not what I wanted. I got the grace that was best for me, not the grace I asked for. So I think a lot of that happens, and that is also a grace to see that some things in our lives that are unchangeable, God can change anything, but some things that are unchangeable, especially for grieving parents, that there's a grace of a balm. I call her, young people say today, oh, that's the balm, but the balm, BALMB, the soothing of Our Lady's maternal love for us and interceding for us as a mother knows what we need. And I think most people, they might not everyone leaves with a miraculous cure. Some do, but some leave with the grace of acceptance, or to embrace the situation in their life. And that in itself is a grace.
Yeah, St. Paul talks about that, right? His thorn in his side. I can't think of how many times I asked for the removal of it, and then to realize the gift of having some of these difficulties and mental health issues in terms of being able to help other people deal with theirs. And had we not been forced to confront these things in a little bit of a public way, how many people, we constantly hear from listeners who are in therapy or sought that help or sought the healing or did a novena that they wouldn't have done before. And so it's been a blessing to us to see that happening in our own lives. Jennifer? I
don't know why. I just have to be very honest here, but I feel very moved by hearing you talk about this. It's very emotional for me, and I'm not even sure why. But I never thought about even wanting to go there, but I just really do. And I really was comforted by your words of letting her dispense the grace to the pilgrim, right? That's right for that pilgrim, rather than us asking, because we think we know what we want and we don't really know what we truly need. And we just have to trust Mary with that. And there's just so many things I feel right now that I can't even explain it. But
welcome to Lourdes.
It's like
you're almost there.
It's like I think I want my first time to be not conflicted with like a trip that I'm leading. I think I just want to go just to be a pilgrim for my very first time, just so that I can just be and not be busy, but just be present and available to absorb the entire experience. And I literally have tears coming out of my eyes. I just did not expect that. Thank you, Marlene, for making me cry. And it was all like good tears. It's like tears that I don't even know why they're coming out right now. But I do. I'm just really, really touched by your words, and I really hope that in my lifetime I will get to experience a trip there.
Let me ask you a question, and it ties into what Jennifer's feeling right now. Maybe this is a good opportunity for you to tell us a little bit about LourdesVolunteers.org. Tell us about the work that you do, both in helping people that want to go on pilgrimage for miraculous healings, as well as the people that go to assist them along the way. I think this is an amazing ministry that came out of your own first visit, if I understand correctly. Can you tell us a little bit about the origin of it and the services that you offer now?
Well, I think for us over here across the ocean, if we think back to 1858, at the time of the apparitions in the 19th century, if someone was in a wheelchair, for example, or they were terminally ill, it was like a home sentence. They just didn't leave their house. No. And that's why old houses have double doors, so your casket could go in and out. So they basically were shut in at home. And then the miracles started happening. So they wanted to go to this place. And the train tracks were laid in 1866, right after the miracles are approved, as the crypt of what's to become the Immaculate Conception Basilica is built. And so people would be put on these trains. They'd arrive in Lourdes and they couldn't get off of them. So the good people of Lourdes would hear the train whistle. They'd stop in the fields, at the mill, wherever they were. They'd go to the train and lift the people off and bring them to the grotto. It's such incredible, amazing. And these are simple mountain people. When I say simple, I don't mean that they're smart, they're bright. They're not complicated. Oh, the whistle. You just got to go, got to get them, got to go, and then go back and finish your work in the field or the mill or wherever it might be. And so the bishop watched this and saw this, and he said, this is a grace. And if you become an association in the church, this grace will flow beyond you. But if you don't, then when you die, it could die. So through the church, all the graces flow. So this was the first Lourdes hospitality. It's called the Hospitalité Notre-Dame de Lourdes, which is the hospitality of Our Lady of Lourdes, to welcome the people that arrive that are sick. Then there's the organizations, the associations they become that bring the sick. The first one is from Paris. And that sounds like, oh, Paris to Lourdes. That was an arduous trip back in 1883 and 1885 when they're beginning. That was very difficult travel to get there. It was not a quick one day. The trains still are what they are now. And so they became a hospitality under the diocese they came from to bring the sick. So again, there's a grace, and there's the people who come to serve and do that. We're volunteers. We're not paid people. And so these hospitalities are forming around Europe. Ultimately, there's about 270 of them, but never one outside of Europe until, unbelievably, us in 2000. We're the first hospitality, outside of Europe, so that people could make this journey. And when we say we bring very sick people, I mean, they're on ventilators, they're on oxygen, kidney dialysis, infusion therapy, very, very sick people. But we really believe it's the walking wounded. That's who really needs this grace. And so then there's volunteers who sign up, and they're, again, they pay their own way. There is a tax deduction if you file a long form, here in the US, but that's not why people do it. But so they give up their vacation time and they say always the same thing: I received more than I gave. So, and I say with our young people, if they got one hand on each, handle of a stretcher or a wheelchair with a pilgrim in them, then it's a clear shot to their heart. It's just a clear, open to grace, because their arms are open. And so they come and they serve. And then there's this beautiful grace that happens with all of us being together, the very sick, the wounded, the disabled. Then you have the helpers and the lay people helping, and then you have the medical teams and the leadership, and we're all coming together, and we're all going, and we're all receiving a grace. And it's extraordinary. But because there's no other hospitality outside of Europe except for us, they started coming with us from South America, Africa, and Asia. And now hopefully others will learn, and they'll have their own associations. And it would be beautiful if we could be like Europe and have one in every diocese. And then you get to be with the people of your diocese who care for you and make it possible to make this journey. But I have to say, if you read the book, and we're hoping people will share the book and pass it around, that of those 20 stories, a lot of them came as volunteers. They didn't come to get the grace for themselves. They came and received a grace. And I believe that God knew that was the only way He was going to get them there. If they gave of themselves, and they're all surprised. They didn't come for that reason. And most of them. So the grace is flowing, whether you're there in service or you're there, and I really do. I hope you have passports, because we're going.
we do, but we have a daughter named Lily who's 14. She does not have a passport, but she believes she may have a calling to be a religious nun in the future. And so if she ever found out that we were going, she's like, Mom, you better put me in that suitcase, because I am going with you. We both watched.
I have two pieces of good news for you here.
Great.
One is, there's a passport agency in Atlanta, so you're close by.
That's true.
And number two, teenagers come with us in June every year, and they have a catechesis program. And 14 is the age of Bernadette, the perfect age to go, the same as Bernadette, and be in the grotto. So, but I do think there is, Bernadette said she never had an appointment. She would just feel a pull to go to the grotto. And oftentimes she would go, and Our Lady was already waiting for her. So, so if you feel that pull, anybody that listening that does, God wouldn't put that desire in our heart and then not make it possible. Why,
I know.
he's going to make a way for that to happen. So people out there thinking, oh, I can't do this. I can't go. I can't leave my house. I don't have a passport. I don't have any money. All of those things are earthly things, and God is above all. So God's the travel agent, God's the banker, God's, the pilgrimage leader. We say it's Our Lady's manifest. And sometimes we're surprised to see who she puts on it. It's not who we expect. So, I would just trust. But, not everybody goes. That's what I want to say. If somebody wants Lourdes water, go to our website, because our mission is to share the message of Lourdes. And we do that through what we call virtual pilgrimages for lots of people who won't be going to Lourdes, and parishes and schools and prisons. They're for sure not going to Lourdes at that time. And then we bring the sick to Lourdes and we serve the sick at Lourdes. So it's the three things that we're doing. So for some people, the virtual pilgrimage experience, or maybe through reading the book or having Lourdes water, the grace of Lourdes is available to everybody, no matter where they are and no matter who they are.
Okay. I have lots of questions. All right. I have to just calm down.
You know what? Whenever she says, I have lots of questions, I'm going to do exactly what you just did. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to, you have your tea. I'm going to pour us a little bit more coffee, Marlene. And here we can toast each other here real quick, and then let Jennifer ask all of her questions.
Okay. The baths that you describe, can you help us see what that process is like? I mean, the book talked a little bit about there is a significant waiting line, the long queue of people. Is it co-ed? Is it one for women, one for men? Help us to see what a line looks like, how long one should expect to wait. And is it, do you have to sign up in advance, or do you just walk up, get in line and go? I mean, just some of what that looks like.
Yeah.
Great questions.
Okay.
So I want to talk about the baths before COVID, and then some things that are changing this year, but can change again next year. Okay. So before COVID, it was always the men's side. So there's men's piscines, and then there's on the women's side, women's piscine. Only women go on the women's side, only men go on the men's side. And there's all volunteers inside, and it's a dignified way to go enter into the water. It's very modest. You're always covered. And that's how it's traditionally always been. And you are submerged into the water. Your head doesn't go under, but as much as a person wants to be in that water, and that water is flowing through the tub. It's flowing from right to left. So that water is moving water that comes right from the spring. Wow. And that's how it had traditionally been done for over a century. And then when COVID came, of course, it was the nation of France who shut down the Sanctuary of Lourdes. It was not the Catholic Church. It was they cooperated with the nation of France. And so when it reopened at this point now, still this year, but we don't know about next year yet for sure. But this year now what they do is having you go into the bath. So each bath, there's 10 of them, for example, on the women's side. And I think I'm going to ask my husband, there's 6 on the men's side? 6 on the men's side. I'm sorry, my husband's sitting right over here. And he serves in the men's baths. So when you enter inside, and again, I want to talk about the waiting. So in my ignorance at the beginning, I didn't know there was a special entrance for the sick. So they don't have to wait the same way that the rest of us who are walking and able-bodied to do that. So I didn't know that. So when we go on the pilgrimage, we have an appointment that's entered into the books, and we all go into the baths on this scheduled appointment. And then other times you can just go and get into the line and wait. Sometimes the line is long, sometimes it's not so long. Since COVID, due to the health code and the changes that happened in France, the sanctuary has kept this year what they've been doing, but it's open to change next year. And I want to add something at the end about a special exception for that. So now what they have is you enter into the baths, and they place water. It's poured over your hands. You can pour it over your face, put it on a place of your body you want, but you don't go into a chamber where you remove your clothes and are clothed in a robe instead. This way, it's just onto your hands, and you can place it. And it's a spiritual way they call it the geste de l'eau, the gesture of water that you can make. And some people absolutely love that. They say that to me is very meaningful, and I don't need to be submerged in the water. for those who, especially the terminally ill, for those who really feel strongly they must be put in the water, we can ask for an appointment through the rector. And we have done that and been granted that this year. So the baths are not fully open in the way they used to be, where you're submerged in the water. And I think until COVID is concluded by governments, it may stay that way. We don't know for how long. We don't know what changes will take place. We do know that no one has ever contracted anything from Lourdes water. Yeah. There's no record of that. So, but whatever it is for that person to have that experience, that's what we're going to try to fulfill to make that for someone. But of course, we go back to what Bernadette says: one drop in faith, and I mean that really is profound. And for some people to have that one drop of water, we send it out in little bottles. But the inside the baths, we know that a lot of extraordinary and profound experiences happen, and that's where Lourdes Volunteers is born, so to speak, conceived and then fulfilled in our service there. So it's a holy experience. It's a spiritual experience, and they've tested this water, by the way, and it's no different than other spring water. But they know it's some kind of a incredible, miraculous component because miracles happen there. So they know that there is something with that. But there's some people who have their experiences through the Holy Eucharist at the Eucharistic blessing or the Eucharistic procession, and some people who've had it by praying in the grotto or to Our Lady for her intercession. So they're all considered Lourdes miracles, but because they're associated to Lourdes, but not always with the water. How long do
your pilgrimages normally last, Marlene? When you take a group over? A full week.
Yeah,
okay.
1 week. Yeah. So it's the whole week. So we generally leave on a Sunday and arrive back on a Saturday, but sometimes we leave on a Sunday and arrive back on a Sunday. It depends on the liturgical calendar in the week. And then our volunteers always come. Well, the ones that are on the pilgrimage fly on the planes. They fly on the aircraft with the sick. And then there are volunteers, we call them the A team, because they're really the awesome team. They come before and they stay after. So they're the advance and after team. So they come up and set up, because we stay in the hospital bed facility. All of us stay in a hospital bed, every one of us. And it's right overlooking the grotto. It's where Pope John Paul II stayed. So we have to provide all the housekeeping and dining services, helping people in their wheelchairs and their stretchers or wherever to move around. And we're like a self-contained unit. That means all of us together have to be able to provide for each other. And so that's very carefully planned. And you might think, well, how are you going to do that? I mean, I was thinking the other day, I said this on one show, that I had come into the office and the ladies in the office are all crying. And I said, what's the matter? Each one of them had a parent of a young child call, and their child was dying, terminally ill. And of course, they're on the phones with these moms, and they were crying too. So I said, okay, we have to stop and pray. And I said, let's pray for a pediatrician too. So we stopped to pray for these moms and their children, and the phone kept ringing. And so we picked it up, good afternoon, Lourdes Volunteers. She said, hi, I'm a pediatrician. And I was waiting for a couple literally minutes. In fact, we were almost like, we're trying to pray.
Hold on a second.
It was a pediatrician. So, because I said, we have to have a pediatrician for this many sick children. We have to have someone with specialty in that field. So, it's just grace upon grace every time. And it's all the people who meet each other too. It's very healing for each of us. We pray for each other. Many of us stay connected and for years. I mean, it's really, I'm older than you are, but at our age, you don't make a lot of new friends easily that you just, but we do on pilgrimage. We make a pilgrimage family, and it extends and it stays.
Yeah, ironically, Marlene, that's one of my issues.
Making friends,
the lack of trust, the lack of opening up. So that's that's what's kept me from doing a lot of things. So,
about how many people attend a pilgrimage? What's a typical size for you?
Well, so pre-COVID, of course, now we're post-COVID, so we're coming back because we weren't allowed to travel to France. So it was our country and their country. These were rules that superseded us. So usually speaking, we're anywhere from 135 to 185 people, and that sounds like a lot, but remember, we're not traveling around the country. We are going to Lourdes. We're staying in Lourdes, and in that group are teenagers, 14 to 17, well, 14 to 21, because we have some young people that come and help with the youth, as in addition to the more mature adults that are older, that are there for years of experience. So we have youth group that is there helping us serve in the dining room and helping to, push people in their wheelchairs and helping with their transport. And they have their own catechesis program. And then we have university students who come with us and serve. And then we have our medical teams. We have our advanced team. So we have all these different, it's like members of the family, and we all come together and we fly out of different airports. And it sounds strange, but so for example, if we fly out of Atlanta and we fly out of JFK and we fly out of San Francisco, it's because we can only have so many people in a wheelchair on one aircraft.
Yeah, sure.
And so they're in manageable sized groups. So we fly out of at least 2 cities usually each time. And then we converge together in Paris and come down in different groups and then arrive in Lourdes. And it sounds like it's a long time. It sounds like it's a lot of people, but it's really a family. And it just all comes together. But we need all of those people to make the pilgrimage work.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel overwhelming or too big. It doesn't, because we're in groups. Like in each group of 25 has a priest dedicated to them. So, people fill out their forms and they tell us, well, I have this, ailment, I have this diagnosis, or some people come with us, they don't go to doctors. It depends on each person, what their treatments are, or what their, the mechanicals are, somebody coming with a ventilator and a suction machine, you have to have people for all of these pieces of equipment that are dedicated to them on our medical teams. So when we all come together and we converge together, it amazing, but there's always other things that surface. Like, somebody might look at you and say, gee, you both look fabulous, on the surface. We don't know interior. And so some things have really come up on pilgrimage, that people are suffering abuse since childhood, that they have just set aside, people who've suffered in different ways. And that's not something they necessarily will put on a form or acknowledge on a form, but there's a grace of healing there. And that's why, and we actually have a grief counselor who comes with us, because if we're suffering in some way, we're grieving what we lost to get to that suffering. She's not there to give treatment, but just to support people, to help them to the priest and the sacraments, and then to get whatever help they're needed. So we have people come with us from everything from A to Z. I mean, I there's been every kind of, everything that could possibly be imagined, I think, has come with us. And there were people, but I mean, that have suffered different things. And there's always the grace of what they need is there in the people that are present. And even what we do when we follow through them when they go home, because they're still our family. It's not like they go back and we drop them and we're done. It's, we stay there and stay through with them. So it's, and we do that in June and October, the bigger groups.
Okay.
Then we have other groups that come throughout the year that are there to serve in the baths, for example, or at the train station, helping the people come in from around Europe, or, we're serving in the hospital bed facility. When our sick are not there, we're there sanitizing and helping in the kitchens. And, so we're doing different kinds of service.
How many times a year do you go?
Well, they say I've gone over 230 times, so I know they keep track in the office. I feel sorry for my luggage.
Is it
Just
monthly? I mean, would you say every month you're going?
Well, yes. Well, I would say sometimes, because, the sanctuary is very quiet in the wintertime. They don't get snow very often, and when they do, they take pictures of it and videos. But it's colder, so the active season, as they would call it, as the season runs from about Holy Week all the way through to All Saints Day in November. So that's when there's large groups of organized, that come to bring the very sick. So they're throughout the year. The rest of the time in the winter, it's more quiet. It's more healthy people because it's colder. Although we find some people with breathing issues, better for them to come in the fall when it's cooler, because the heat is oppressive to their breathing in June. So we come around and, for example, we have a pilgrimage now leaving this Holy Week. We're leaving in a few days because this family, in these people, it's not prudent for us to wait till June for different reasons. So this is another, so we have 3 this year. There'd like to be 4 possibly. So we're just, we go when God calls us.
Well, I would be remiss if I didn't ask the question. I mean, you've profiled 20 miracles in your latest book here. Can you share one that really just comes to your mind right now that you can share with our audience?
Yeah.
I know they're all amazing.
And then after that, we want you to tell us which of your 5 sons is your favorite.
No.
Well, thank you for realizing that.
Yes.
Yeah. So I say that. I said, it's, I consider them like facets of a beautiful jewel.
Mm-hmm.
And each one of them is a prism of the extraordinary, brilliance of their experience. And they're all so different. I think, because there's physical issues in there, and then there's other kinds of suffering, grieving parents, post-abortion. There's all kinds of issues in there. Somebody in Hurricane Katrina, and that's where his miracle comes, is screaming into the storm. He needs Bernadette to help him, and she does. I mean, it's all of them are different. There was a nurse through COVID, and but I think the people also who'd been away from the church a very long time, and then came back to the church. But it's not just that they came back to the church. No, God then has a reason why when they're back in the church, they're needed for someone else. I think there's, so many, my husband just whispered somebody's name to me. So in his chapter, he just retired as a full bird colonel, but at the time he was a major when we met him. And his only son was killed in a car accident. And he deployed to Afghanistan a month later, was gone for 15 months. And by the time he came back, I think the medical officers, they just see the worst that we can do to each other as humans. And the devastation and, just all that happened. And he's a very heroic officer outside of the operating theater. But so outside of the medical, it's just, he had an amazing career, but by the time he left there, he had walked out of the church. And that can happen, that, somebody who's faithful just has a series of events that happen in their life, and it can bring them closer to God, or it can just walk them out away from God. It depends on so many different things. And so he was wounded and suffering, and everybody could see it. I don't think he realized how wounded he maybe was, or how much suffering that other people could see in him. But he wound up coming with us as we have a medical director and medical teams that come. And we had some wounded and disabled veterans who were coming. And so we needed somebody really who was also military, that they could speak the same language. And so he wound up coming. I'd never met him before. And there's some comical things about him in the book that, like, for example, he wouldn't wear the white lab coat. We have nurses who come with us and they say, I'm not wearing a white nurse dress. I only wear that on my graduation day. I only wear scrubs, or I don't wear it, but this is how it's done in Lourdes, and we've adopted it, and it works. That we can look across the room and see the priest has a collar. He's the priest.
Yeah.
We can see our leaders are in a navy blue suit. We know that they're the leaders. We can see that the medical team has on a white lab coat, or they have a white nurse's dress if they're women, or white scrubs if they're men. So we have a system where we can all identify each other, and the pilgrims can look and say, oh, I know that you're the nurse that's here. I can ask you a question. So he didn't want to wear a lab coat. And I knew he wasn't listening to anything I said to him on the phone anyway. So we get to the airport and nobody's listening to him. And we have a man with a broken back who's got a turtle shell on, and, it's some very wounded. And so for them to go through security was really, really difficult. And so he was frustrated that here he is the major, he's the medical command officer, and nobody's listening to him because he's just wearing a shirt and pants like everybody else. And quite honestly, he looked like one of the wounded soldiers. He just did. He had that look about him of brokenness. And so by the time we got to Paris, he was frustrated because he sees he could have been a help, except for nobody recognized who he was in the group. And so he said to me, well, basically, if you were really good, you'd have had a 44 lab coat. And to which I reached down in my briefcase and pulled out a size lab coat, brand new in the package from Land's End. And it was so funny. And he put it on, and then everybody listened to him. And and I have to laugh because his picture in the book, I asked him, do you have a picture of you at Lourdes to put in the book? He doesn't have the lab coat on.
Oh,
I was about to look. I was just about to look to see.
He doesn't have the lab coat.
That's so funny.
I think he's is he chapter 19 or 17? I don't know. But
that's great. That's great.
So when he came, the first time, though, he was very clipped. All his answers, I called him the monosyllabic officer.
Yeah.
Yes, no, just,
Mhm.
mostly no.
Yeah.
So when we got there was a schedule we have to follow. And he was following the schedule because that's how it's laid out. At 08:30, you do this, So he went to the grotto because he was supposed to, and like everybody else was, and not expecting anything at all. He was very angry with God.
Mhm.
And so he's chapter 17 of the book, my husband just told me.
That's
So
so great.
so he gets to the grotto and he hears a beautiful heavenly voice. And she speaks to him and tells him, I hold your son now
Mm.
the way I held mine. And he
Wow.
just, he said all of the hatred. He was very angry. He said everything just shed off of him and just fell into the grotto. And it really changed him. He doesn't have his son back, but he has peace that he knows that she's holding him till he gets there.
He got the grace that he needed versus whatever it is that he might have wanted.
Wow.
Marlene,
So that's one story. But the other stories are very, very different.
yeah.
They're all so different.
Wow.
and so that's why we really wanted to have you on to talk about this book, to let people know about it. It's called Everyday Miracles of Lourdes. We'll put links to it obviously in the show notes, and you're probably going to see a link to it on the video right now as well. It's an amazing work that you've done for someone for a couple that has always had a great love for our Blessed Mother. To see this work happening and not knowing about it until your book showed up. We had no idea that LourdesVolunteers.org existed. What an amazing story. What an amazing conversation. And I'm so glad that we fought through the technical issues we had at the beginning of all this, because I honestly believe, this is only a testimony in my mind. Someone's listening right now that's going to end up going on one of these trips with you. And on all those technical issues, that was the devil trying to stop that from happening. And so praise God for that, and praise God for the good work that you and all of your fellow Lourdes volunteers are doing. Marlene, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having us, and thank you for your love of Lourdes, and I will see you in the airport or in the grotto.
Well, I have a feeling that you're going to make it happen. So
Yes, I feel a pull.
I think Jennifer's going to be taking our daughter for a passport photo this afternoon. So, thank you, Marlene.
Thank you. God bless.
By the way, one of the things that we neglected to ask Marlene about, and she confirmed for us after our interview, all proceeds of this book, all proceeds of the sales of this book are going to go directly to help LourdesVolunteers.org and help people to go over and experience miracles. So if you know someone who is looking for a miracle in their life, maybe buy an extra copy of this book, one for yourself and one to give away to someone else. It's a fantastic book of stories that will truly inspire you and leave you in awe. I think you got choked up.
I did. I had no idea.
I was really surprised you got choked up.
That I didn't know that was going to happen to me. But there was something about when she was explaining the kind of the mindset, I think, of pilgrims, perhaps who are afraid to go because they have this major ailment that they want to be healed from, and they don't know if God's going to heal them or not. I think a lot of people understand what I'm saying there. But when you consider the idea of just trusting Mary to allow her to just give you the grace that you actually need and trusting that, and then it's like you can't lose. There is no way to fail. You just receive. I mean, the only way to fail is to like clench your hands in a fist and goes, no, I don't want that grace. I mean, yes, I guess from that respect, you could refuse the grace being offered. But I really was just so comforted, and I just felt this rising sense of, I don't know, my heart, everything was just sort of bigger. Everything, there was a real burning in my chest, like a desire that I couldn't even fully understand. Like, I don't really consider myself to be a person in need of healing. Like, I feel like I'm basically a healthy, able-bodied woman. Sure, typical aches and pains, like most people my age, but nothing extraordinary. And so I never really thought that Lourdes would be necessary, I guess, for me.
So can I interject
So this is why I'm like, well, why do I want to go? It's like, I really feel like I have to go.
I don't want to divulge or get too personal on something.
Sure.
I feel like there is something that hasn't been quite 100% healed.
Mm.
So that's one thing.
Mm-hmm.
From long time ago before you and I even met. So it's not my fault. It's not a healing because of me. I also think that you, because you have endured with me in sickness and in health throughout the course of our marriage, that there might be a joint healing that might occur. And the third thing that I think that, again, seeking the grace that we need versus the graces that we want, even if the other, part one and part two of what I just said never even occur, of some sort of other kind of healing from all the stuff that we've endured, my mental health and whatever, and then from you earlier in your life, we have felt strongly with Rosary Army that even though there was a time where we thought maybe things were wrapping up a few years ago, as things are ramping up, increasing, that I believe that it might be a proactive grace that we need for what's ahead. That's my suspicion of what we might experience, is that it's something that is going to protect rather than heal for what's ahead for Rosary Army. And that's my suspicion. Again, I don't know.
It's a theory.
But that's I feel like that's what was strong in me is, again, I would want to go and not ask for something specific. And this is part of what total consecration and having just gone through all those prayers, and that's part of School of Mary and what we're trying to build up, right? That going through all those prayers and going through them again, it's like it's so much better when we are given that gift that we. Let me put it this way. You know, from my perspective, I actually love it when I receive a gift from someone who actually saw something and thought, this is really perfect for Greg. Versus, Greg, what do you want? It's like, I want that Ms. Pac-Man 40th anniversary arcade machine, which that really is what would be best for me. But I'm just saying, the one that has Galaga and Mappy on it, I'm just saying. But that's what I want. But what I need is, I can't even imagine. And so I would want to throw that. So we're sitting, after we finish the conversation, I mean, I do think it would be proactive and it would be prudent to just go ahead and get Lily that
to get the passport.
The passport. Just go ahead and do that this week, because that's not difficult to do. And if you just start doing that process and pay for the expedition, because
that's true.
There's something about being prepared, not necessarily just for a pilgrimage. But this keeps coming back on our radar. These opportunities and we keep saying no because of this, and this. We keep coming up with the excuses. We keep telling God no. We're not saying whatever you want. We're completely open. But we keep creating impediments for God so that we can't say yes to Him. And if Lily is in her, so that's just something to consider.
I mean, and just also hearing, Marlene talk about Bernadette being 14 and it's like Lily is 14, and
I think I knew that, but then you watch the movie and that girl,
she's older.
She is not 14,
Yeah.
And so I think we get that imprint of that's the vision of her.
Yeah,
I mean, she looks like she's in her 20s. It's like,
exactly.
Oh yeah, she was 14.
Well, and like you, I really feel the compulsion to follow through with this pursuit, this response to this invitation. And just to trust everything to our Blessed Mother. I don't want to ask for anything. I just want to go and receive whatever she wants to give me. But I feel like I need to go and receive something.
Well,
that there's something I need to be there to receive.
You might be there for someone else.
Yeah, whatever. I mean, I just feel that it's necessary that we go. And I never thought I would say those words. I just did not wake up today knowing that would come out of my mouth.
Well,
so praise be to God. So we're just going to be open, and I'm gonna take Marlene's advice, and I'm gonna call her friend at the office and just start that dialogue.
Doesn't cost to ask a question,
right?
And it doesn't cost anything to start taking steps forward, right?
Right.
We might incur the cost of getting Lily a passport,
right?
But
sure,
but
that's fine.
There's no harm in doing that.
We'll do it,
right? So. Hey, thank you for being here. Really quick, with Rosary Army and the things that we're trying to do, we really would love to have you be more of a part of that. We're actively working towards updating the website. It's going to be all new again. It's been a few years since we did that, and so it was time for a refresh there. But it's also, that is part one of our journey of launching School of Mary. Will you please keep our initiatives in your prayers? That's the biggest ask that we have for you today. We're making a lot of decisions and doing a lot of different things for Rosary Army. Obviously, financial help is needed, but again, we're just trusting Jesus and Mary to provide all that we need. But go over to rosaryarmy.com, put your name and email address in there, get on our mailing list, be aware of what we're doing, and maybe pray about how you might be called from God to be a part of this ministry. And maybe, who knows, maybe a few of you watching right now might be going over to Lourdes with us in June. If that is God's will for us to go, maybe it's his will for you as well. And maybe we'll see you over there and experience some healings together. God willing, we'll see. Thank you again to Marlene Watkins for being on the program. It was great talking to her husband afterwards as well. I kind of wish Bill had been on the show with her for part of it. That was kind of exciting.
Got to give a shout out to Barry.
To
you know who you are.
Neighbor Barry, who made it happen. He fixed all the technical issues. Hey, pray your rosary today. I offered up in Thanksgiving for this show and for the work that Marlene's doing. I offered up in Thanksgiving and in prayers for protection for all of the Lourdes volunteers over at lourdesvolunteers.org. Links and everything can be found in the show notes and down in the comments as well if you're watching on Facebook. If you are watching on Facebook, hit the subscribe, blah, blah, blah. You know all those things you're supposed to do. And we'll see you in a week. But in the meantime, make sure you are praying your rosary every single day.
And do whatever it takes to be holy.
Sincerely, thank you for spending time with us and being here with us and growing in the faith and growing in holiness. We look forward to talking to you in a few days. God bless, folks.
Bye.